at Turbo 360. We just finished up the Instagram React Native clone, and today we're going to make a messaging app, and we're going to do things a little differently. Last time it was a very basic video to get you just kind of used to React Native, React, hitting an API, just touching on a couple of different endpoints. And today what I'm going to do is kind of pare down the features. For example, even in our Instagram clone, there was 3 screens. We didn't have enough time to build them out. Well, we did, but I mean, my goal today is to be able to do maybe we'll probably have only 2 screens in our app, the simple messaging app, and the difference is going to be fully functioning. And what that's going to entail is doing a lot more work on the Node Express side, the back end side, to kind of make the app complete. So while last time was the intro video, we were demonstrating this is how to do a GET request, and then on the server you can get your objects, send them back. We're gonna basically complete this application. So by decreasing the scope, we can go over more edge cases, make it more complete and fully functioning. And obviously we'll build out a good UI as well, which is pretty easy for just a messaging app. So yeah. Okay, so to get started, let me just enlarge this for you guys. Go to wherever you do your development, and then we're going to run React Native init, and I'm going to call this message app. And again, I say this every time, but just for anyone out there, if you're on create React Native app in Expo, then just do create React Native app and whatever your name is, simple, whatever. Again, if you don't know anything about setting up, there is a, if you check the show notes, there's a tutorial for setting up your development environment. It's about a half hour, so I don't include that in all the tutorials, but check the notes and it'll link you to that. So if you haven't set up your development environment yet, go do that, pause, and come back, and we'll be here. So this usually takes a few seconds. Okay, so and once you're cd into your application, and you're going to run npm install, and then you're going to do React Native run iOS or React Native run Android and React Native start. So you can need those 2 commands, either Android or iOS, and React Native start. And some people last time said they were a little offended that I was using iOS simulator instead of Android. I guess I'm a iOS fanboy or whatever, but this video I'll use both. So once we have the app and we're messaging between them, what we'll do is we'll put both on the screen, and we'll assign 2 different user accounts so we can have them messaging each other. So we'll have both. Okay. Now I'm going to again React Native start. So this again bundles your JS, if you can spell it right. It's an important prerequisite there. And then here, when we run React Native run iOS, or for the Android people, run Android. So this is where it does the linking with Xcode and whatnot, and this is where it usually takes a while. So we'll let it do its thing. So I guess while that's going, let's talk some features that I want to include. So we want to have user accounts. Log in and sign up. And then each user is going to have the ability to send a message, delete a message, view a message, view all messages. I haven't decided if I want to do like pictures or something, but I'm trying to keep it more simple because, you know, like every app you're going to need some sort of, you know, picture upload or something. So we cover that in another one. I don't want to just keep doing the same things over and over, and you know, people know where to look. Send a message, delete a message. Oh, this time what I want to do, which is different, is we're going to set a cookie, or the equivalent of a cookie. And this will allow us to, if it finds the token, log us in, so we don't have to keep logging in every time. So that's important. Send a message, delete a message, view message, view all messages. I mean, I guess that's pretty much it for a messaging app, right? Like, I guess it's going to be pretty simple. Is there anything else? I was thinking of doing something with kind of like self-destructing messages, but I'm not sure if that's really. I don't know if that, like, I was thinking of setting it up so you could say this message will last 14 hours or something, and then it'll delete. That I'm not 100% set on. We'll see how far we get, but basically what you do is set up kind of a background job on a server, and then when that runs, yeah, we can do that. It's kind of like a more advanced feature. And I think that's pretty much it. And I'm gonna pause the video for a sec. Oh no, it just finished. Perfect. Okay. I was gonna say I'm not gonna talk too much more. I'll pause, but it finished. So let's see if it's running. All right, so there's our application, and just open your project in whatever text editor you use. And all right, and so like all the videos we do, we're not really going to work out of this main root here. So we'll use this to register the component, but we're going to have to build another directory here to start building our app out of. So I'm going to make a directory called, let's see, source. And then in there, I'm going to make a root app.js. And then I'm going to make a components folder. And then in there, we're going to have I'll call it screen. And then in there, we want to create an index.js and I'll call it home.js. So if we come into here, this home.js, index.js, the first thing we want to do is real quick just import home from home and export home. And again, the reason we do this is because when we have 25 screens that we need to import somewhere, we can just do it in one line. When we don't say home from home, we can just say import home other component from this directory, which you'll see shortly. And then in our home.js, we're just going to import React component from React. Then we need for now I'm just going to do a view and text from React Native. and we'll say class home extends component and export default home. And then like in web, we wrap your stuff in a div. Here we're using views. Same idea, just kind of like the most basic, boring component. And in here we'll give a text. We just basically want to do something to see if we can get something rendering. And just, you know, it's one step at a time. Let's see if we can set our stuff up right. And then app.js, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to, for now, just do const app a stateless functional component. And we'll get to this later. I just want to just do it to demonstrate there's other way to write apps. Sorry, write components. Just because you're going to see it and you'll be confused and say, that doesn't look familiar. Import home from components, screens. And this is what I was saying, we don't directly have to import home. So then when we have more screens, we can say login, etc. And we don't have to explicitly reference each file here. So that was the point of that index file. And so right now, all we can do is return home, render, make a nice one, nice and clean, and then we got export, and then when we come into our index over here, import app. Oh, so it already had an app for us, which I just replaced, but so I'm going to say import app from ./source/app, and then we can just delete this one here. Okay, when I opened the folder, it closed my current running terminals, which is something I always find annoying at Visual Studio. I don't know why they can't keep them running, but so anyway, remember you always have to have your bundler running in the background. That's that React Native start command. And well, you can't see, but because this says am I rendering right here under that, so everything's set up properly. And just to show you guys the file structure in case you missed it before, so we have a source directory, components directory, and then in components we start with this screens directory. And what we want to do is to start is kind of try to render like a couple of messages, right? And we don't really have any messages yet. But what I'm going to do is start with kind of rendering the list of messages so we can kind of build out some UI, and then we can use that to create, delete, etc. So we're going to need to store these messages. So let's run over to Turbo, and this is where we're going to build our backend. So go to your apps, and it's free to sign up if you don't have an account. So I think they just need your email, so it's pretty easy. Message app. Alright, so once you make your app, you want to grab this app ID here, and copy it. And then we come back to our app here. And in this source directory, we're going to make a config folder. Source. And we're going to make an index. And this is going to be kind of a common place. We store a lot of like constants and things like that of that nature. We're going to say export default. And I'm going to like maybe image URLs, different like style, stuff like that. But for now, I'm just going to say turbo app ID, and just put your app ID in there because we're going to need it shortly. And once you have that, what we want to do is basically we're going to make some fake messages, and then we're going to retrieve them and then kind of display them on our screen. So I'm just doing this a little different than last time just because I figure I'll just kind of like change up the, which we do first each time, just to, I think people learn different ways and visualize things differently. And like for me personally, like if I want to learn something, I'll watch a video about something one way and then another and then read something, and kind of like all fills these kind of like little pieces and then like clicks. So I'm going to try from now on with the videos to kind of just do things different ways to kind of help with that. So let's jump to our back end and let's make some messages, and then we're going to have to pull them down. So we have our boring app here, just rendering some text. We know it's set up, working. We can see our changes. Let's find something to display. So you're going to have to open up a new terminal. And if you don't have it already, npm i-g turbo CLI. This is going to scaffold like a quick Node Express backend for us. You have to do sudo. And once that is done, you can go to wherever your other app is and run turbo new message API. I'll call it. CD into your directory, run npm install. And if you open it, and it's going to close my thing again, which is very annoying, but message API. We have these, we have to do one more thing, which is to link our app. So it's turbo app, and then what you do is grab this same ID here without the quotations there. Alright, so now your app is linked. So now when you deploy it, we can kind of have them talk to each other, the app, the API, and the app. Okay, so now that that's all set, let's just go into our public. Let's go to our routes, and I'm not going to go too heavy into the routing and stuff. I think we'll just kind of learn as we go. But just go to this route api.js file, and so here we have some sample resources. So I'm going to make this message one is going to return all our messages, right? So to start, we're just going to say const messages equals, so we have this array, and what kind of information are we going to need for our message? We're going to need a to user, and again, this is I'm trying to switch it up and kind of frame it this way. I think it might help us kind of think about how we reason about our apps, how we know what we need next. Like So we're starting with this object, the message object, and we're just trying to think like what other stuff is it going to need. So it's going to have a to user or from user, and now I'm already thinking, okay, so we're going to have some way for a user to create a message and link them, right? That's what I'm trying to just walk you through, that kind of basic logic. So so it's just going to be a message, and then like for example, do we need to restrict the length of the message? Do we do that on the client side or the server side? Like stuff like that. So those are the things I kind of want to do in this app, like make it more complete, and kind of go through some of those kind of thought processes. So that's kind of the goal here. What is today? April 23rd. Okay, maybe a date, time. So like for example, maybe actually that would be a good thing to go into. I have a lot of people say that they are not that familiar with like date time objects and sorting. So that would be a good one. We could do like a date time, and then we could do some sorting and stuff like that. So things like that I want to go over. So this is for now is a string. It's going to have to become a date time object. Maybe I could do. All right. So now we're creating a new date, and we need more messages. So I'm going to just copy and paste for now. I'm going to save. And one thing we're missing, what that's going to be generated by the server when we get to that, is each of these are going to have an ID or some unique way to track them. Like so, these messages are not going to be the same. There'll be some unique ID if we have two messages. So we have some messages here, and if you check our route, which I got rid of up here, so this res.json. So basically, this is a function here, and it says if anything matches this route, which if you check our app.js file, is actually being prefixed by /API. So anything here is really /API / and then this isn't actually resource, this is a variable, and resource is just the name given to us to reference it. So it's saying anything that matches /API, so /API /messages, for example. What do you want to do with it? And then we say, okay, we'll give you a function as a callback. That's what we want to do. And this res.json is the result of the function, and the request is the variable we can use to talk with the request object. So just to give you an example, our that message word, we could say const it's going to be rec.params.resource. So const resource equals rec.params.resource. Or if we want to use some ES6 goodness, we can do this the same as that, just a shorthand property. And then so down here we could say if if resource is messages, do this, else do this, stuff like that. So but for now we're just trying to make a basic thing, fetch it and render it, just to kind of start framing out our app. So we're going to do res.json, and we need to give a message, confirmation, success. Sorry, I'm inside my array right now, so give me a second. Confirmation success. Data, and then data is going to be this messages array that we just created. And what we want to do now is just run turbo deploy, And again, make sure you link your app up here, otherwise it won't deploy. We'll see if that works. So basically, what I want to do is make sure if I hit this endpoint that we have all these messages showing up. And then the question is, how do we get them onto our app? All right, so you'll get this callback here. So grab this callback and /API/ again, remember I said anything would work there because we're not even checking. You could do this, and we get all these messages, right? So that was just like a quick, we're not even checking for a param. It was just to get it working. But this is the endpoint that we're going to want, /API/message, and it's the singular. Some people do plural, but that's like the index wrap. So that lists all the messages, and then when these have IDs, you could say /message/ the individual ID to fetch the individual message. But to start, what we need is this. Okay. So that's working. And so we have this array here, right? So we want to get these and loop through them, and for each message in the array, render something on the screen. I mean, you can kind of see it here, so it kind of makes sense. And then when we want to make messages, we're going to add stuff to that array, etc. And so let's go to back to our native app, and let's also throw in this config file our URL. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it the base URL, because we're going to have more requests at that same spot later. And we're going to get rid of this /API/message piece. And then what we're going to do is go to our home page. We're going to import our config. And just to make sure that imported properly, I'm going to say config.base URL, just see what shows up. Alright, so it's hard to see some sort of URL there. So let's just fix that real quick, because it's going to be annoying. So let's bring in a style sheet. And let's say view style equals styles.base or container. Now down here, I'm going to say const styles equals, so this is just a regular JSON object, and look, we called this styles.container, so we need to make our style object down here, and I'm going to say width 100%, and this is JSX. This is how you have to write it. So this is annoying, perhaps, but you'll get used to it in like 5 minutes. And let's say just a display flex. Let's also give it a flex of 1. I'll say justify content center, align items center. So this should center everything. I forget almost every time if so this isn't being centered this way. So how's that container? Yeah, that's okay for now. But that's working. Rendering some text. We got a center. Now we want to render this list of messages. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say const messages equals What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and paste them from the server, our server JSON mockup, just while we kind of get our UI a little bit, and then we're going to figure out how to fetch them dynamically. And then what we'll do is we'll delete our local copy, and we'll know if it worked or not based on if they render. So const messages equals, just grab this array, and so what we do now in our container down here is we say messages dot map, and then for each message we want to say return view. Actually, I'm going to call this, we're going to return a message. But message does not exist yet, so we're going to create one. And what we need to do is pass in all our props, or I mean, we pass in our message to the message so it has access to all this data. So just like this. So this message component here that doesn't exist yet, this is going to be kind of a different kind of component. It's going to be like a view layer component. And so if you can see here, it's just kind of taking this data and we're just wrapping it, and we're going to give it some display logic. So these are what are called view components, presentational components, dumb components, etc. I'm sure you've heard a million different names, but the point is we're just passing this data through. So if you come back to the top here, let's import our message. // and so right now we only have a screens directory, so this is going to be, I'm going to call it presentation or view, but that's the, we'll call it view for shorter because I can't spell. And so let's go and create that directory. So in your components directory, we're going to make a view directory, cd into it, and create an index file and a message.js file. And then same thing we did before, import message, export message. And again, if we didn't do this, the equivalent, what we'd have to write over here, this would become as such. And you'll see them both ways, so I just want to demonstrate that. All right. Message index. Okay. So this one we're going to make also a stateless functional component that const. The one that didn't use a class we did before. And the reason is because we don't need any access to any sort of state in this component. We're just passing in, as I was saying before, just passing in data and just wraps it and renders it. So it's just concerned with view logic. So we don't need a full class. It's just a function we can pass. And then export default, your message, and let's say we need a view. We're going to need all the same stuff, view, style sheet, text, maybe an image. Maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll give an image. View, style sheet, image. text to render the message, probably the most important part. So you're importing these from React Native now. Alright, and let's just, what I want to do is, I'm not really sure what's coming through to our app here. So what I want to do here before this return, I just want to say console.log props. And we're going to refresh this page here. Okay, so what did we do wrong? Undefined is not an object message. Alright, forgot to save this there. Okay, so now we're not crashing, we're not rendering anything. Let's press, so if you're on Mac, Command D and say debug JS remotely. And I'll pull down my debugger here. And let's see which got passed through to each of those components. So it's literally the exact object of no extra keys or anything. Just see to user, from user. Just to demonstrate something quick, if you go to, sometimes people will do this and say message equals message and pass in the variable or give it some extra key, which is fine, but now if you look, I can find my, see now we have this extra message key, so it's kind of messy, and I think it's called object destructuring. It's an ES6 feature and it's very handy, so that's why we do it this way. So gets rid of the keys, cleaner. Now we're passing the exact object through and everything's kind of synced up nicely. No extra keys to worry about. Okay, so we have our exact data that we want to work with right here. So let's just start rendering that. So we come into our message here, and what we can do is we would say props dot to user props dot from user and props dot message and I didn't even pay attention before for how our dates came out. Oh, so our dates worked. That's cool. There's going to be a little trouble here because now it's going to be a string, and we'll straighten that up later. Convert it back to a usable date time object. All right, so now this should be capitalized. Okay. All right, so now we have these messages here actually rendering. So we kind of have these messages here locally, and we have these messages on the server, and we want to get the messages on the server here because it's just static. And then we need to start adding to that list. And that's how we're going to build out our app. So the next step is, well, let's build out this UI a little first. So let's not have it look too bad because everyone will just stop watching. Styles.message, and let's make a style sheet down here. And let's call it message, because that's what I just called it up there. We're going to say width 100%, And let's give it a border. Border width. And then I've been using this lately. You can do style sheet dot hairline width. And it's like a super thin line. So it's kind of nice. And we just need some kind of vague gray to use. I'll use this color of the iPhone 6464. Sorry guys, it's a long day. Alright, and now you see how it doubles up here? You need to have a way to get to so it only does one. So we should pass in a property to the pass in a property so it knows if it's going to be the first item. If we can give them all just a top border except the last one. So we have to tell the last one that it needs. I'll make this larger so you can see what I'm talking about. See how it's like doubled up here? Because look, this one's getting a border, and then this one's getting a border on the bottom, and then this one's getting a border on the top. So now they're stacked up, which we do not want. So what we're going to do is first this border width property we're going to get rid of, and we're going to give everyone a top border width of style sheet dot hairline width. And then what we're going to do is only one of these needs a bottom border. So we're going to here say styles.message. We're going to make an array. So we say const style equals styles.message. And we're going to say if props.last style.push, and we're going to say bottom border width style sheet dot hairline width. So just to basically, if you have multiple objects you want to use, you can use an array of styles. So oops. So actually, yeah. So we need to do this. Oops. Hold on. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry, I'm back. All right. So what we were saying here was we need to make an array of these styles. So this right here is an empty array, and then the first thing we want to do is push in our old style. So that's going to be styles.message. So style.push, and then what we can do is check if we have the last prop right here, and if we do, then we're going to push this additional bottom border width, which by the way on the break I was looking, either top border width or bottom border width or both, they might be the wrong property. I think it's border bottom, border top. So yeah, I believe. So I'm going to try to fix that right now. Border bottom, border top. So let's give that a try. And the one kind of missing thing is how do we get this last prop? So right now no one has it. So let's just refresh this page and see what we have. Interestingly enough, For some reason, we have no border on the top and bottom. I expected no border top. I expected no bottom, but I didn't expect the no top here. I'm wondering if there's something with the container or something. I'm just going to add some extra. The other thing is it could be my screen. Oh yeah, okay. So these hairline width borders are so small you can't even see them really. So I should have changed the colors or something just to illustrate the example. But now you can see that this one doesn't have one. And just to re-illustrate, I forget how hard it is to see these. It's really hard to see, but basically like these are all doubled up. Like in a real app you would notice. It's hard to see on the screen, but because it's too thin, but it's a bad. Well, let's say I did. Well, that's probably why it's hard to see. All right, let's do that. Here we could see. I'm just gonna do 1 pixel for now. I'll just make it like 5 pixels just to demonstrate. Why not? Like on a real app, you would notice. You see how these are doubled up because they have the top and the bottom. So that's why we need to come up with this something. And the reason we can't just do that is because now we lost our bottom width. So the message component, remember this is a dumb component. It doesn't know that it's the last one, so we need to tell it. So what we're going to do is right here, we're just going to say const last index equals messages dot length -1. And for now, let's just throw in a log there, see what it says. It should be 4. I think only 5 messages. And then here we're going to say const last equals, let's say I is equivalent to that same last index. And so this is going to become a Boolean true or false. So you just drop it in there. And if I refresh the page, I don't anticipate. Oh, look, it worked. The first time. And I don't think we're. I'm wondering if we're doubled up. You know, just to make sure we're not doubled up, and maybe I'm returning everything as true. Let's just do that same thing we did again with 5 and 10. So I'm going to comment out this one. I'm going to come up here, and I'll comment this out. And this will put as 5. So these look doubled up. So let's open up our debugger because we left that console log going. So let's see what's happening. And if you look here, all of our properties are getting this last is true, which should be false. So we gotta figure out why that's happening. Messages dot length -1. I forget all the time. And use messages dot size. Home JS54. Last index is 6. 6 minus 1 should be 5. So, by the way, I do stupid things like this all the time, or just, you're out of it or a long day and you forget. You're like, why isn't this working? So, like I always say, if you make mistakes, it's not a big deal. Debug, find your way through. All right. So everything, our last index is fine and all that. The only thing I'm wondering is, what is this log as? I think I have the actual solution, but I just want to be thorough. False, false, false. Okay, so I think if you do this like single prop like this, like I remember before we had to pass this in. This is like a shorthand method you'll see exposed on some stuff where you can pass in stuff like that. We have not set up our item like that, so we're passing in. I assume is the problem. We need to actually pass this in as a prop like this. Let's log this, and all right, that looks fixed. So what happened is, now these are all false. When you just pass in the shorthand like that on a Boolean, I think it automatically reverts to true unless you explicitly give the key. So it's like a shorthand. Let's say you use a bunch of props, extra width prop, infinite scroll. And you pass these in, they're just true. But if we actually want the Boolean logic, we need to pass it in like this as an actual prop. So that was the issue there. So let's get rid of these logs everywhere before you forget. Sometimes you'll do this and then you'll forget, and then you'll have 400 console logs in your app. Message. And let's just fix these back to our hairline widths. Refresh. And all right, so there we get these nice crisp widths. And it's good enough for now that we want to fetch these from the server now. So we got like a little bit of UI. These are actually going to go into what's called a flat list later, but we will get to that in a moment. All right, so we got these messages. Let's actually try and fetch them now. So we have our home component. Oh, you know what I'm going to also add? We're going to do infinite scroll on the messages, so that'll be a cool like new feature that I was thinking about, like a full app. Let me add that to my log before I forget. So we're going to have to set up pagination on the back end and infinite scroll on the front end. So you only fetch the stuff using lazy loading, so we don't blow up our back end by trying to fetch all the messages every time. Anyway, so let's go back to fetching our messages. So here we have all these messages. We don't want to use these anymore. We're going to say const messages equals this dot state, and in our constructor, call super, this dot state equals blank. We're going to say messages. All right, refresh, and look, now our messages are gone. So again, we have them on the server. Let me pull that up. I forgot our server address. It's in our config. All right, so we have our messages here. Sorry guys. Too many screens with the font so big. All right. So we had these messages here. We just copied and pasted them to get some basic UI. Now we need to get these onto our device. So this is the endpoint. We're going to need to use, I forget this every time. Because we don't have a custom domain, like we're just using our own domains. Well, Turbo has free SSL, but basically, if you have to buy a domain name to get HTTPS, we need to add a key to our dictionary to allow HTTP. And the workaround for that, because I'm trying to think for people using Expo, we should. I'm gonna see if Expo allows HTTP. Expo allow HTTP. Oh, okay. So if you're on Expo, you can actually just fetch this by default, according to the forums. So you're good. For you, everyone on native, we got to do this real quick. Stack Overflow. So basically, you have to just add this here, where it says this dictionary. Allow arbitrary loads. I think that's it. So just take this and go to your iOS folder. So we haven't even touched it on this in this tutorial. This is all like our native stuff. You don't have to go into this much. And Android, we'll do the same thing for Android quick, just because I don't know if Android blocks it though. So go to your info.plist and see it has this dictionary of all these other things. NS exception. What is this one? Sorry guys, I have way too many screens open. Okay. NS allow arbitrary. NS. We need this key here. That's what I forgot. All right. Jump back. Oh well, they already have this the key for us here. So, for example, if we paste this right here, you'll see this NS app transport security. It's already in here. So they have a dictionary there of exception domains, localhost. So we don't want. All right. So grab this dictionary here. And then get rid of all that stuff. Okay, so our dictionary has to like merge with this one here. So let's just paste it next to it again. All right, so exception domains. Allow insecure. Oh, so this is already in here, which I'm surprised. All right, this is already in here actually. So let's see if it works. I don't know. Maybe because on last tutorial I did the same thing. I don't. Maybe it copied over like as by default. It's kind of strange, but I'm just gonna. I will leave it for now. We may have to come back. And for you guys, if you're getting all your HTTP requests rejected, this is where you have to come and basically add this here, this key, allow unsecure loads true. All right, let's see if it's working. All right, so if we go back to home, we need to fetch these messages. So the best, we can use these component lifecycle methods. See, component did mount, did update. I think the best one here is component did mount. And we're going to fetch. And the address is going to be config.base URL. And we do have config. And we just check the fetch syntax because I have been using Super Agent recently. Now everyone's using fetch, so it doesn't matter. But fetch is native with, comes bundled with React Native, so I'll start using it. All right, so component did mount. Let's fetch this guy. Config.base URL. And this we're going to have to add in plus API plus message. And just because I know it's now like best practice, so we can also do these backticks. I don't know if you guys have seen. So the equivalent is, it's the ES6 feature. You do backtick instead of a string, and then your variable is, I think it's called string interpolation. Config.base URL API / message. So it looks pretty similar. And I think we left a slash on the end of that base URL before, so we should be good. Where's our config? I'll check. Yeah, okay. So headers except, yep, so we gotta set our headers. So fetch the URL. Then we gotta pass in a bunch of params. So first one is our headers. Application. So if you've used any HTTP library, this is very like a boilerplate, and you should be used to it. Content type, accept. Don't know what it doesn't like about my string here. Oh. And then we need body. We don't need a body. We do need a method. So this is going to be a get. And then I don't really like the syntax, but again, it's the new preferred. So we have to return fetch. And here, say then, so it's a promise. And this is the part I don't like. You have to convert it to JSON here. And response dot JSON. I just don't really, I don't know, I'm just not a fan of this extra step. Like obviously we want JSON. I'm sure someone smarter and more in the know can explain it better, but. And then here we have our response JSON, and I just want to do a console log. So let me just zoom in here so we can see. I guess I don't have to call it JSON stringify, which is good. Response is not defined. Okay. right, this is what we need to set this up as a proper promise block. So then we get a response, then we call response.json, and then, okay, that should hopefully do it. But network request failed. All right, let's catch our errors here too, and log our errors. I'm guessing that we did need to add something with those HTTP keys before. All right. Where's my debugger? Okay. Network request failed. So let's jump back to that Stack Overflow thing. All right, maybe we could just we need to add an exception domain. So right here, they're saying that the localhost is an exception, and we're going to allow HTTP from localhost. We want to do the same thing for key dictionary. Turbo. I don't remember what I did last time. I feel like I just gave some sort of like wildcard or something. Turbo360.co. Dictionary. And we want to allow subdomains too. Let's try these two. And let's see if this works. And I believe, unfortunately, we may have to recompile quick. So, wait. React Native run iOS. This will take a minute. So hopefully this works. So basically iOS at some point, they decide they won't let any requests go to HTTP sites. So that's kind of our issue here. And where's our debugger? Let's see if we're still crashing. Because last time I did this, I'm fairly certain that I just like whitelisted everything, which might not be what we want. So network request failed. So this might be a little less secure here. They're adding this at the top of their file. And this app transfer. So I'll do this for now, but I don't know if this is really the best solution. Read up on it. Dictionary. still failing. I'm going to rebuild this one more time. If not, I got to pause and do some debugging, but this should be, I think this should do it. Alright, so this time we got a typo here, which is good, which means I made a typo on the client side. Response is not defined. I believe I made the response. I mean the typo. Then response. So we are getting a response. And let's see it. So here's our response. Then response. And it's not converting to JSON for some reason. Here we're getting undefined. Maybe we have to pass the body. Let's try that. Response.body, which is usually what you have to do, but we're just looking at the tutorial and they were saying no. Return fetch, then response. So we have here our array of messages. So it's working, we're just not parsing it right. So confirmation success. I don't know, I'm just not really a fan of this, like this fetch syntax. I don't really. Maybe that. Alright guys, give me a second real quick. Find out how this needs to be parsed. Hey, sorry guys. So yeah, so this is actually a pretty easy one, but we have to return our promises. So return response.json. And now let's see what we have to work with. All right, there's what we want to see, confirmation success and our array of messages. So the last thing I'm going to do here is, so we want this .data is going to be our messages. So we're going to set state. And we're going to say messages, response data, response JSON.data. All right, let's try that. And look, now we're loading, we're fetching, and then they automatically render. And just it's pretty quick, so it's hard to see. But so what you would normally do now is we're going to import an activity indicator. And this is how you deal with these asynchronous requests. And like this on your app, when you submit something, the activity indicator comes and then leaves when you're done. So I'm going to here say show activity indicator, and I'll just drop it right in here. And I believe I'm going to pull up the docs real quick. I think there's a method where it automatically tracks some state method. So give me 1 second. So you can, instead of having to write the logic, you can say, let's see. I don't see it, so we're just going to have to do it ourselves. But I know you can give an animating prop and a size prop. Let's give it large. I thought there was something so you could just track. But so what we need to do here is say this dot state dot show activity indicator. And if we show it, here it is. If not, null. Move this to a new line so you guys can see. And close that. Okay, so what we want to do, so now let's refresh. Show activity indicator is not defined. I forgot to give it as default is going to be true. And do you see that? See, and then it goes up there because now they're both there. So what we want to do is once we if we successfully fetch our JSON here, let's just also pass in this extra set state and say activity show activity indicator is going to be false. And if we refresh, see that? So asynchronously loading our data upon success, hide the activity indicator. One other thing we should do is hide on error because otherwise it's just always going to show there. So we got to handle both cases. And that's pretty cool. So especially, I mean, this is like a really quick request. It doesn't matter, but let's say you have like a 2-3 second request. It's very bad UI to not give some sort of loading indicator. Otherwise, people are think their app is stuck or not working. So yeah, so that's pretty neat. So now we can fetch these messages. I think we gotta start creating some so we can get rid of these kind of fake ones. And in order to create them, we're going to have to log in. So next step, we're going to create a quick login feature, and we're going to store a token so you don't have to keep logging in. So your user ID will be stored via Async Storage. For those of you who watched my last series, you'll notice I magically just teleport into different locations in the middle of the series. My building, not my apartment, is under construction, so I'll randomly have to go to the office in the middle of the series. I don't want the sound quality and the noise in the background, so yeah, sorry about that. But anyway, so we need to do this login component or login feature. And I'm going to pull up some documentation from React Navigation. And so they have a new Navigator. So even if you're familiar with the library you tried a few months ago, you might not have ever seen this one. I'd say it's probably 2 months old, but I could be wrong. But they have a new feature that I don't even know if it's in here. Switch. Yeah, it's not even in the guide. It should be in the API. They have a new feature that is called the Switch Navigator, and basically it acts as almost like a switch. So your app can only have two states, right? And then, on one scenario you navigate to this screen, and one you navigate to the other, and it's perfect for logging in. So before this, you had to do a little more, I guess, complicated stuff to be able to log in. But now with this, you can log in pretty easily. And basically, you'll set some condition, like if user logged in, go to this screen. If not, go to this screen. And you'll basically, when we do log in, store like a cookie or the equivalent of cookie in the root of your app. So next time you load the application, it decides, it finds this item, and then just decides which screen to send us off to. So before that, you would have to kind of rig up or kind of more hack something together. But now, once we log in, we set this, it's called Async Storage, but we set this, like, think of a cookie like a website, and then next time we hit the switch, and it just says, if logged in, go to this screen. If not, go to this screen. And it's significantly better than the previous ways of doing it. So that this I'm kind of excited to show. And we used it in the last app, but we didn't kind of use the cookie functionality. But like I said, today we're trying to build out this full featured app. So we're going to need that being said, a login screen, because right now we're not logged in. So that's the first thing we're going to need. So go to your index here, and I don't think you guys have this. I was just typing and realized I wasn't recording. So import login from login and just export it right here. And then go over to your app.js. And we're just basically, for now, because we don't have the Navigator set up, just going to hijack the home screen. So just import login and put it right there. And we need to create that screen. So let me increase my. There we go. So cd into your directory, create a file called login.js, and I'm gonna just take this home here, copy, paste, and get rid of everything except our base. And I want to keep this method for now. Just going to comment it out because we're probably going to use the same fetch API. We don't need any of this state stuff for now. Fix your class name here. And we're going to need all these same view text, style sheet, activity indicator. We're going to need an input, text input, and we're going to need this config. So just to expand this a little, we got all the same imports, added a text input. Make sure you change your class name here. Get rid of all the other junk. Let's keep this root style for now. It's kind of centering everything. And just make sure you export it properly. And if it works, we should see nothing here. All right. So first up, we need to talk about logging in. So to log into our server, we basically are going to get a name, a password, and send it off to our server. Some authentication goes on in the back end, and we get returned like a cookie, right? And then for our session, so anything that goes on in your application here, because again, this is a little different than like a browser session. So if you close this, and right, this is all still in there. But now if we force kill the app, any information you have is still good. But once we force kill this app, all that's gone, right? So what we need to do is find a way so that when we begin again. So the way to persist things past past that session is with async storage. And if you guys have like an iPhone or something or Android, you could go and clear your storage cache, things like that, if you want to reset your app. So that's kind of where that's stored. And Android and iOS have different implementations under the scene of how they store these items, but async storage provides a very simple API to interact with these items. So it says right here, iOS, there's specific native code that stores small values, and in Android it's using either RocksDB or SQLite. So there's all these different things going on under the hood, and React Native provides us with a common interface we can use to basically store stuff. And it's really, really simple to use. So if you look here, you just call async storage.setItem, and you give this key and then the value where you want to set. The catch is that we can only store strings. So, you could store a bunch of JSON, but you need to stringify it and parse it first. But it's more meant for storing these like smaller things. Like it's not meant for storing all your app information. Well, I mean, I guess you can, but let's say for all these messages here, right? Like if you want to cache them, you could parse to JSON and storage. I typically don't do that. I guess if you were making some massive app with a billion users, you might want to cache more stuff. But I think for most of your guys' purposes, we're probably not going to be doing too much caching except for things like this. Or maybe if for some reason you have to fetch some copy or something from the server and it's only going to change once a month. I don't know, but for the most part, like for our purposes, we're going to store these like cookie type values is what we're going to use it as. So to get the cookie, we need to receive a successful authentication response from our server. And fortunately, we can actually, so before we were making our custom API, right? So, which is good. We're going to need a lot more features. For authentication, we can actually authenticate with Turbo directly. So we're going to go send the message to the Turbo CDN. Sorry. Basically, we can authenticate with like this central service through using a CDN. Like we load the package through the CDN. Actually, we're probably going to. We need to install it via npm. So ignore the word CDN. So we install this package via npm, and what it does is going to allow us to interface directly with this kind of central authentication authority. And a lot of other providers do a similar thing. Like Amazon has Amazon Identities or Amazon Incognito. So it's kind of like this way to authenticate users without having to hit our API. So we hit this central authority that authenticates us, and then we're going to store our cookie, and we can use that cookie to make our custom like API calls. So in order to use this central authentication, we need to install the Turbo SDK. So that's a little too big. All right. So it's Turbo 360 like that, npm package. And if you're on the web, you can use the CDN and just pull it in via script tag. So sorry for the confusion there. Previous loads. Okay, so what we can do now is, I hope you guys can see this okay. Yeah, okay, so what we do now is go back to our config file. And remember I told you guys to save this app ID. So we're going to have to come back to our login here, and let's just say component did mount console log or alert config dot. So just make sure that's all loading up. All right, so there's our app ID. And so what we're going to do is import Turbo from Turbo 360, and then down here we need this config.appid. We can say const turbo, and we make an instance of turbo, and to create the instance we need to pass in our site ID. Oops. And then what we can do now is call different methods on this store, on this turbo instance. So I'm going to say turbo.create user, and I believe we have to pass in some credentials. So I'm going to say const credentials name. I'm going to do it by email. And password is going to be, and guys, this is my password for all of my bank accounts and everything, so please don't steal it. Just kidding. Okay, so here's our password. And I think that's all we need. So I'm just going to pass these credentials in. And then we're going to get a response. And I'm going to log the response. Actually, I'm going to start alerting this stuff just because it's too much sometimes moving around the screens and pulling up the debugger just with the recording. You're generally not supposed to alert these kind of things just because it can disrupt kind of the flow. It's intrusive. Like an alert can change the flow of the app kind of. But for our purposes here, it's okay. But if you're working at home, just make sure to console log these and do not alert them. Message. Alright, so this is supposed to just create this for us. Let's see, on mount. Let's see what happens. So we got a success, first name, last name. I don't know if you can see this, but we got a JSON payload and we got this ID back. Now let's go to our dashboard for our app. And if you go to our data store here, we have this user model. We just created this right here. So we've successfully created a user. And there's these other default parameters that we can use, first name, last name. This is one of the nice things about this dashboard. So you can come in here and edit stuff, which I kind of like. And we could actually, I might upload an image here actually, because I'll use that in the message chain. So let me just take a quick screenshot. And then what I'm going to do is, this is actually a cool turbo feature. If we come in here, we can go to the storage. There's a built-in CDN. So now we're really using a CDN. And if you upload a file here, it goes directly to the CDN. Not the best picture, but it'll do for now. And so come back over here to your data store, and if you go to edit this file, just refresh this quick. Just drop in this image here. So now we have this image. So I'm going to use that as our like profile image once we log in. All right, so now we know we can create the user, but this is not dynamic at all. And also, we're in the login screen. I just created this to create a user. This will be moved to the register screen. Or maybe I can call this like authenticate, and we can have one screen where you choose to log in or sign up. That's probably a better UI. All right, so I'm going to change the name of this real quick. Class authenticate screen. I'll just call it authenticate. Now we're going to handle login and register in this one screen. Authenticate, and save that. Should crash. Authenticate. And it seems kind of minor, but it will later on when you're like, you have more screens, and it will make a difference, because let's say you have a bunch of apps you're working on, and you'll be like, oh, there's login, where's my register function, where's my sign up screen? But this will help you kind of remember. And change the name real quick. And what we can do is, where is it? Okay, in here, just change authenticate. And if you guys don't care, you can leave it, that's fine. And this should get an error because we already exist. Unless it... Let's see what that's doing with all these users. Data store. Okay, so if we already exist and we submit our credentials, it's just... it's just logging us in. So it's handling that for us, which is actually kind of nice. But I don't want to use that in an unintended way. So what we need to do is... Okay, so this is going to be our authentication screen now. So we already have this create user function that we know is working. So I'm going to just take all this, right? And cut it. And we're going to make a method right here called register. And then these credentials, I'm going to move to our state. And I have email, password, and they're going to be empty by default. So now these credentials are stored in the state, and we're going to use these same credentials whether we're logging in or signing up. So this is going to become this.state.credentials. And then we're going to make a login function, which is going to be login. And it's going to look the exact same. So this.state.credentials. Then response. And this actually is going to work out good, because what we're going to do is store the cookie that we get back, and then we can take that, put that in its own function, and they could share it. So the fact that we're in one screen now actually works out pretty nicely. So we have login, register, and I don't need this old componented mount that I thought I did, so I'm going to get rid of that. It's getting in the way. And we need to import Async Storage from React Native. And we need to go to our config file and create another variable, and then we're going to call this key, or user ID key, and it's going to be a string. So logged in user, you can call it whatever you want, but the point is, like if you check the docs of Async Storage, see they have these keys that they reference everything with, and let's just say we have 15 places in the application where we have this random string we're calling, and then we need to change it for some reason. It's going to be a huge pain. So we want to have one place where we set this string and just keep referencing this. So if we ever do need to change it for some reason, it's all in one place. Config. I'm going to close out some of these tabs because they're getting in the way here. But again, remember, you can call this whatever you want, just get this variable. And now on component did mount, we're gonna need to. They're both gonna need access to this turbo here. Actually, I'm gonna see if I can make this a class variable. So this is accessible to the whole class. It should work. There should be no reason it doesn't work. And unlike state, it doesn't affect our appearance. So anything in state, like we're always watching in a render block, and any changes are instantly reflected. While any class type stuff, it doesn't matter, but we need access to it without the class, and this is kind of best practice. So it's the same idea. We can just reference it, this dot turbo instead of this dot state dot something, but it doesn't affect our appearance. We're not watching for any changes on it. Like, this is going to be static. And so here our function is going to be this dot turbo, and the same on login, this dot turbo. All right, so on component did mount. And for now, I'm still not using the state that we set up here. That's going to be after we set up our input. I'm just going to say on mount. So I'm just going to pass these credentials in for temporarily. Then we can just do login credentials. This dot login credentials. All right, so let's just reload the app, make sure we get success, everything's still working, which it's not, so perfect. Credentials, okay. This dot login. Whoops. This dot turbo dot login. All right, so that was a success, right? So what we want to do now is we need to store this key here. So just to make sure I'm like parsing my JSON properly, right here, response, I'm going to say response dot, I think it's response dot data. Let's just see. Undefined, so it's not. Let's say response dot ID. Alright, so there's no data key there, it's just response, so we just need response.id. So what I'm going to do is say async storage dot set item, and we need a key and the value. So the key is going to be that config dot what did I call it? User ID key. Again, we only use the variable, so we only have to change in one place later on. And then this right here is what we're going to store. And this returns a promise. So I'm going to hear this alert, and I'm going to return async storage. And what we want to do to test if this works is we're going to store it here. Then we're going to kill the app. And well, first let's log in. So it stores it, right? We're calling it on componented mount. Then we're going to kill the app. And then we're going to change our component to, well, I'll just do them both right here. So we're going to say try async storage dot get item, and it's going to be try, do I need a catch? Okay, so we're going to try catch. This is the new like async await. Try catch. Okay. Try await. All right. Catch error. And so our get item here is going to be that config dot user ID key. I'll say const user equals, and I believe we can just log it here. I just need like probably need like 15 minutes of just reading up on async await, make sure I have all the syntax right. But I believe this just, it does kind of the same things as promise. It's just like kind of more automatic and a cleaner syntax. So this is asynchronous, but this is making, this one line makes it synchronous, or what we'll find out in a second. But basically, this first time before we log in, right, this should return login. Okay, yeah, so this should, by the first time, this should return undefined, and then this login credentials. And I also want to just login. Await. I'm just going to try this for a second. We'll see if it works. We'll wait. Alright, I'm just going to leave it how we had it. Await is a reserved keyword. Okay, wait. Don't know. Get item. Const value equals await. I think this is exactly correct. Not really sure. What it doesn't like about my bundle here. For some reason, it's I have to look to why it's doing this. I'm just going to go back to a promise based real quick. So grab this and get rid of all this try catch stuff. And we're going to say get item, then console log item, and then we're going to also log in there. This should come back. The only thing I'm worried, this might come back undefined, and I don't know if that'll end our promise chain. But I'm just gonna leave it outside the promise chain for now, while we're because it's just for an experiment. So this dot login. Okay, that's fine. So our first login, hoping was a success, and setting the cookie, and now, just to be safe, I'll refresh it. Let's pull up that debugger. And index.js. Don't know why it's not where we're logging that, but I'll alert it here. So if this alerts successfully, that's a good thing. That means we stored our key successfully. So yep, so that's all working. Again, just to reiterate, now let's force kill the app, so it's completely dead, right? Now if I open this, I expect to get that back. So we've set that successfully. Just ignore all that confusion with the async await. I'm not sure what I did wrong there, so I went back to the standard promise syntax. But the point was, when we logged in, we set that key, and here I'm saying let's get that key and alert it, and we have it. So now we can use that key to authenticate ourselves and skip the login screen. Like, that's our version of a cookie. Alright guys, so we got that async storage working. We can store our cookie. Now we need to do is, well, two things. First is navigate to the specific components based on if we have our cookie stored. And second, we do need to add some inputs and stuff for login. I haven't decided if I want to do that in this video or not yet. I think I'll do that in the second one, because that's kind of there's just some more stuff to go over. So it's pretty simple, but I kind of want to keep up with the cookie stuff, and then I want to get these messages coming dynamically based on our cookie. And like that, I'll finish off this episode. Okay, so here's our user credentials. We can log in, we can store it. That's good. Now we need to go back a level to the root of our app, and in here we need to, instead of returning authenticate, we need to see if we're logged in or not, and then we can decide which screen to return. So first we're going to need so actually we don't like to demonstrate this first part, we don't even need React navigation, but we're going to need it later on. And plus, once we do log in successfully, we want to be automatically redirected, so we are going to need React navigation. So we're going to do npm I save React navigation, and this at this point is the most popular navigation library recommended by Facebook, etc. So it's a pretty safe bet at this point. And I think in the last 6 months or so, they've gone out of beta and they're in version 1 point whatever, and they have a lot of good features, and it's gotten much better. I think when they first started, people were complaining about stuff, but everyone complains about everything, and it's a pretty good library. So we're going to import stack Navigator from React navigation. Switch Navigator, sorry. This is that switch I was talking about before. And we need to make some, make like a navigator. So I'm going to say const switch equals switch navigator. And later on we might have other navigators, but for now we just have our two screens. So I'm going to say home. It's going to be home. And authenticate. And I believe that is correct. And then right here, let's just see if we could render this switch or not. So our app's still rendering. And if I flip the order here, put the auth back on top, we should see that blank screen again with our cookie. So this is working. Now what we need to do is we need to check the documentation on how we, what is the recommended way to render this app. And I was just going to basically check the cookie and then kind of pass in where to go, but I think there's a built-in kind of like method or something that tracks, so I just want to check real quick. I'm actually going to pause for a second real quick and make sure I get it right to present it properly. So hold on one second, guys. So what we need to do is we're going to actually have to change this to a class component instead of a stateless functional one. I was trying to do it before with the stateless one and it got a little too hairy, so we'll just use the niceties that some local state can provide. So class app extends component. And then we got to give a render, return, and we're all set. So now what we want to do is when our component mounts, we want to check to see if we have a valid token. Now later on, if you have a more advanced application, maybe you send it to the server, it gets re-authenticated and sent back. For our purposes, if we have a token, we're calling it authenticated. So we're also going to have a constructor here with initial state, auth checked, false. Okay, so when we mount, we want to check if we have been authed yet. And sorry, we want to check, see if we have one. And then if not, we're going to say, we'll set these to true or false, and we'll set auth check to true, and that should allow this to execute, but we will find out in a second. So we're going to need async storage, so just come up top here, import async storage from React Native, and get item, and we're going to need that config as well, so import that config. And then for now, let's just console log and see what we get. And I'm going to alert these again. To reiterate, do not do that. I am doing it so you guys can see without having to keep pulling up the debugger. And I'm curious what's going to happen if, I'm going to have a loading indicator. So I'm going to say return, if we've checked our auth, let's return this switch. Else, let's just have an activity indicator. Activity indicator. Okay, we need to import an activity indicator. And it's not going to be center because we don't even have a view or anything in there. But for now, let's just see what happens. Unexpected token. Component is not defined. Oh, and here, import component from React. Auth checked is not defined. And so this is going to be this dot state dot auth checked, which is false. Okay, you see up there that little activity indicator? So look, there's our activity indicator because we haven't been checked yet. So this would be a good place where you would do like any pre-authorization for your app. So maybe instead of doing auth check, you could do all sorts of authentication. And then what we want to do is maybe have our splash, depending on how long the things are, kind of have a splash screen with just the activity indicator type thing. So that's kind of the idea here. And then once we have our data and once we checked, then we're going to render the switch. And so that can be either way. That's going to be either our home screen if we are authenticated, and if not, we're going to send to the auth screen. So we're checking, we're showing this auth. Once we check, then we can decide what to render here. Now what we want to do here is make this a function which is going to take in an argument called authenticated. So it's going to be a Boolean. And then we're going to return a switch navigator. And what we want to do is down here, we can pass a configuration into our switch. And we can say initial route and we're going to basically let it know, are we going straight to the home screen or the authenticate? So if we're authenticated, it's going to be home. If not, it's going to be auth. And const root nav. Okay, so then down here, instead of rendering this switch, we're going to right up here say const switch equals, because this now is not a component, right? This we just got rid of that switch. Now we just have a function, so we got to call root nav. And we got to pass in true or false. So I'm just going to pass in true to see if it's working. So again, we should see this flash for like a second. And you know what? We have this dot state dot auth checked. So let's just do this for now. So we're going to reverse that because we haven't set that yet. That's going to be set after we know we've checked, and let's just deal with the asynchronous nature of the async storage. So now we got our home, which is what we expected. Now if I set this to false, I would expect to see that blank screen that just alerts our key. which, all right, so this is all working. So again, just to reiterate, if you come up here, we now have this function that's going to take in a Boolean, and it's going to return this switch navigator that we set up. But the dynamic part here is we're going to change our route based on if we're logged in. Now the one part we're missing down here is we need to actually check that key. So come back up to our component did mount here. Alert key. So for our purposes, again, we're just going to say if we have a key, we're good. If not, false. So I'm going to say if key this dot set state, and we're going to say auth checked is now true. We've checked our auth, right? And are we actually authed? That's going to be true. Else, so if it's undefined or something, then we're going to say this dot set state auth checked true, and this is false by default, so we don't have to change it. And same thing here, we want to handle this error state so we don't just get caught spinning indefinitely. So let's give this a try, see if it's working now. If auth checked, yeah. And then here we're going to pass in this dot state dot auth. So let's give this a try. And if this works, I expect to be refreshed. We're going to see this for like not even a second, and then take into our message screen, our home screen. So it's not working. All right, let's open up the debugger. And let's stringify this. So auth checked false, auth false. So it doesn't get our true. So let's come back up here, component did mount, and see if this is taking place. So again, anytime we're debugging, just go one step at a time. All right, our state's not updating. Let's come back up here, see what's going on. And let's just log this, see if we even get a response here. So right here, I only see one log on 47. So look, right here, I misspelled component did mount. I wrote component did mount. So here's what happened. I started here. I said I'm not getting the state I expect. Let's go up to the next spot where I set that state. That's in here, right? So I said, all right, maybe this key part is not returning what I want. Let's kind of see what happens from async storage. That didn't work. So right here, I just said component did mount. Let's just run console log anything. So I'm looking at my debugger. I don't even see that run. That should always be run. So the issue is right here, just a typo. So again, everyone makes mistakes, and it's good to go through debugging and stuff. So let's try this again. I'm feeling ambitious. I'm going to get rid of these logs. Alright, so it works now. And again, we should see this little one from the home screen. That one might be even too quick to even see. Oh, you see it for like a second there? So that will be where we could have like a splash type loading screen. Maybe do more in this more initialization if we need to fetch our user. Maybe that's what I'll do later. But so we show this part here while we're doing all this auth. Once we're auth, we render the switch, and then the switch takes a state true or false if we're logged in or not. And then up here, we decide if we want to render the home screen first or the auth screen or stack. I mean, right now we just have screens. These will become stacks later based on if we're auth or not dynamically. And we can log in and stuff later on based on this, but we're not up to that yet. And just to make sure it's working, what I'll sometimes do is flip like this, just to flip the auth. So if we're not authed, it takes us to this login screen, which we have not built out yet. All right, so now that we're auth, I'm going to jump back to the server, and let's just refresh this. So we have all these messages here, right? Now what I want to do is, all right, let's open up our server again. Message API. And here where it's to user and from user, I want to change these messages to be to user as my ID. So let's go back to our app and just kind of grab that ID. Or let's go to our dashboard because we're the only user so far, so we should be able to grab it pretty easily. So go to your dashboard. Apps, message, data store, and grab your ID. And so here where we have to user, let's just change this all to ourselves. 1, 2, and let's change 3 of them to ourselves and leave the others with just this default whatever in there. And let's just change from Dan, from Rob. Alright, so I'm just changing some of these up, but the important thing is some of these are going to have our ID and some are not. So now when we get these messages, I want to parse by our ID and only get some of them back. And also, I want to make a second message here from the same from user. And I'm going to basically begin to group these as well, like you would in a real messaging app. All right, so now if we jump back to, let's just make sure this works locally. So we're turbo dev server, go to port 3000. /message /API/message. All right, so we have these now that they're not all have the same to user. So what I want to do is deploy this quick. So as long as it's working, just kill it and just do turbo deploy. By the way, if you don't want to deploy this or change any of that SSH stuff, you can just run it off localhost. I don't really know how Expo behaves with the localhost, though. That's why I tried to deploy it. But so you can set your config right in your app if you want to just do everything locally. Go to your index.js, and here where I have this base URL, you can just do like a local host and run everything locally as well. I should have mentioned before. And I'll comment it out because we can only have one. Localhost 3000. I think that is correct. Okay, so if this deployed, we get this callback. And let's just do /API/message. And so here's our messages. And now what we want to do is in our home here, we're going to need to pass a query string. And what the query string is going to be to user with our user ID. So I'm going to say query const query equals and to user. Oh, so this is another thing I don't like about fetch, but you have to use this. You have to make your own query string, I believe. So I suppose some other libraries where you can just pass a JSON object, but to user equals, and then here is where we need to get our user ID. Now, how are we going to get this? So we don't have any kind of Redux or anything set up, so we're going to have to get that from our store again, which is kind of annoying. So import async storage. Well, it gives us some good practice. So get item, and it's going to be that config user ID key. Then we're going to get the key, and we got to move all of this. So return fetch. Okay. So this is going to go in there. So we're making a promise chain now. Return fetch blah blah blah, and then where was it? Query. So this const query will go right into here, and then this key we're just going to put right there, and then config. So we're just going to insert the query string right here, and return fetch. So this should return a promise. So let's do this. Then response. So most of this is the same. Then response. Catch. I think I'm off a level here. Save that. Okay, So the one thing I'm going to do here is before this goes, I'm just going to log that query just in case I have any issues. We'll know kind of one thing to just check out. But what I want to do is run this, and the ideal scenario is that we only get back like these 4 edited messages instead of all of them. Again, unlikely on the first try, but let's give it a try. So obviously did not work. Actually, 1, 2, 3. So we're getting our messages, but it didn't take our query string, and that's because, well, 2 options. One, let's jump back to our API. So right here we just have const messages, right? And we're just returning all these messages. What we want to do is persist these messages to our database, and what that is then going to do is allow us to use that query string. It's like right here. So let's do a quick and dirty way to fill up our database. So we have these messages here, right? So what I'm going to do is just hide this for now, and all we're going to do is say messages dot for each message, and I'm going to say turbo dot create a message, and then we're just gonna so it has to be a string. So this is all in the documentation, but we're using the data store now, and then this is going to be a message. Turbo create message, and I'm not even going to call it then or catch. I'm just going to run this real quick and just see what happens. So now if I do it locally, I believe that it should post to our central data store. So I'm just going to run this locally real quick. And let's just see if it creates API. So again, I'm not even setting a response or anything. So this is going to get busied up, and we don't even know what's going to happen. But let's check our data store quick and see if that actually worked. So we just created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cool, we just created all those messages. So now we actually have some messages in our data store. Again, this is a quick and dirty way to get that store populated. And we're going to obviously create messages on the fly later, but we're not up to that. So come back here, and what you need to do is, once they're created, again, make sure you see them in your database. Get rid of that messages.forEach, and get rid of all of these messages. We don't need them anymore because we have them in our database. And we're going to do const resource equals rec.params. We're going to say turbo.fetch, and we're going to say resource. So this will work for multiple resources, by the way. Right now we only have a message. And for our params, or what we're going to search by, it's going to be this is how we get our query string, rec.query. So this here is our params. Anything after that question mark that you've seen in your search bar a million times is our query string. And I think I could just pass this in here. And so we got, this is a promise again, remember, so then data res.json, data, this is going to be data, so that's that key we gave right there. And if we have an error, we'll log our error. We'll do confirmation fail. And message is going to be error.message. This is just kind of like basic API stuff here. And the one thing here, this resource, actually that should be okay. Like sometimes we could like kind of whitelist some resources. So say, so the resources we know we're allowing in our app. I can actually do it out here. Const valid resources, so it's going to be an array, and we'll have message. So for now we only have message, and what we want to do here is we're going to say if valid resources dot index of our resource up there is -1, so it's not found. It's less than 0. Then we're going to render this failure case. So this kind of whitelisting, we're opening up certain routes right now. It's our only route for now, but maybe later we want to close some stuff up. And the message is going to be no such resource. Then we're going to return. Error, return. And you want to return from each time you res. It's just best practice, and it could otherwise hang up your express route. So I'm going to just run this locally, see if it works. So this still works. Now I'm going to say and to user. So that's a missing ID. It doesn't work. So let's just, I'm going to throw this up with our one and see if it works real quick. Actually, let me get that ID from our console log from earlier. I hope I logged it. Okay, let's throw this in, make sure this works locally, and we're going to throw it up and pull it down in our app, and then we're dynamically fetching only our own messages. Did I get less? Alright, so look, now if you look, I only have these 5 messages, while before, without the query string, we have, well, 8. So last step, let's throw this up there. Now let's come back here, and if we set this up right before, it should only show us 5 messages here. So let's, once this is done, give it a try. Deploy complete. That was pretty quick. Nice. Refresh this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very cool. So again, to reiterate, when we log in, we get this ID, right, that we're storing, and now we're fetching only messages directed to us. So this is gonna, I hope you guys kind of see the way we frame this, how we're kind of expanding, and now we can only fetch these messages, and now when we send messages, we can tie them to certain people, and they're gonna get them. We're gonna be able to group these messages based on the user IDs and whatnot. So it was kind of a lot for our first video, but we went over a lot of good stuff, and I think we set up a good base to kind of keep building this out. I'll see you guys in part 2. And by the way, we're going to start off part 2 with just pure styling, because I always remember that when you're building something like this, it gets kind of a little dull. So now that we got through some pretty good stuff in the first video, we'll kind of reward ourselves, do a little styling, improve the UI a bit. And then we're going to continue our functionality. So we got to add in those inputs so we can actually log in and register. Right now we just kind of faked it. And again, we need some good UI for that. And then depending on where we leave off, we may get to grouping these messages. We'll see where we leave off. But that's the next part of my plan. Okay, cool. I'll see you guys in the next part.